A small little representation from the Canterbury Tales, written by Geoffrey Chaucer, a famous writer during the 14th century. He lived from 1387 to 4000. The Merchant is one of the most popular stories written by Geoffrey Chaucer because it was written on Mid-English or Medieval English, which in that time is what a vernacular language, since the official language in that country was French and Latin.
For this storytelling activity, you will be given these flags containing the number 1 and fill in the back. You will be presented with some questions during the storytelling, and you will select 1 or 2 and raise your flag, please, to let us know your comprehension of the story and tell us what do you think is going to happen in the story. Enjoy your popcorn.
Once, there was dwelling in London. There was a worthy knight who had lived nothing for 60 years without a wife. Have you ever seen such a sight? However, when this knight, January, had turned 60, whether out of devotion or dotage, he decided to finally be married. He searched for a lot of prospects and was convinced that the married life was to be his paradise on earth, especially with a young, beautiful wife. January, one day, sent for all of his friends, telling them of his intent to marry, explaining that he was idle and old, and wanted a wife no older than 12, which he could mold like warm wax in his hands. Various men gave him various advice about marriage, some praising it, some arguing against it, and the altercation continued all day. The core of the argument was between Placebo and Justinus. Placebo cited Solomon, advising January that it would be excellent to marry a young wife, and telling him to do exactly as he pleased. Justinus wanted January to be more careful and more thoughtful before taking a wife. Guys, here comes the first of the questions. Ready? The first question says, why do you think Justinus said that? Was he trying to, number 1, advise him? Number 2, was he jealous?
What do you think? Was he trying to advise, number 1? Was he jealous? Let's see what happened.
The answer is that Justinus was trying to warn him because a young lady tends to betray an old husband. What do you think? Is it possible? We'll see. January began to prepare for his wedding. Fair woman and fair bodies passed through January's head like images reflected in a mirror, set up in a marketplace. But eventually, January selected one. From all of them, you know, many were available to him, but he chose me. Calling his friend, January asked them not to make any arguments against what he had resolved to do, and voiced his only concern, that a man who finds perfect happiness on earth as he would with his wife will never find a similar happiness in heaven, for one must choose between one perfect happiness and another. January married his intended. He married me in a lavish and joyous ceremony. At the end of the feast, the men cast spices around the wedding. Guys, here comes the second question. It says, how do you think everyone was? Number one, happy and joyful. Number two, angry.
Were they happy and joyful, or were they angry? Thank you.
Okay. The answer is that everyone was happy and full of joy. Everyone that is, except for Damien, the night squire, who was madly in love with the lady maid, that he was going crazy. So later, Damien decided to send May a letter. But oh no. Damien slipped his letter to May, knowing that she could not afford to have it discovered. May hid the letter. Later on that night, May read the letter and tore it up quickly. And just then, May decided to return Damien advice. Why should she do such a thing? Could it be? Let's wait and see. January had also during this time become blind and became increasingly possessive of his wife. Guys, here comes the third and final question. It says, why he was like this? Number one, he was leaving his wife. Number two, he had a disease.
What is your answer? Let's see what really happened.
The answer to this question is that January was blind. That's why he was really possessive with his wife. He wanted to go everywhere with his young wife. And oh no, this caused Damien a great grief. And May to wed very often, for January was always in her company. However, May and Damien kept in touch via letter and by various secret signs. May imprinted January's key to the garden in one wax, and Damien made a secret copy of the key. The 8th of June came around, and January decided then to go to the garden. May went to do also and let Damien in secretly. This can't be good. This doesn't seem right. Damien quickly and quietly sat next to the pear tree, and May told her husband she longed to pick and eat one of the pears. So she went to the tree with Damien, who was smiling, and just then, January let out a loud roar. And asked his wife what she was doing. You see, his eyesight had returned at that moment. May told January that she had been told that the best way to restore January's eyesight was to sit with a man next to the tree. Really? Can you believe? What a surprise was this for all of the three. Finally, May convinced January that she didn't want to hurt him, but to help him. Do you believe it? We just have to see it. Or as it seems, it did after all. Because this is how this tale ends. A round of applause for Angel as January, Olivia as Miguel, Spencer as Placebo, Jose Miguel Dustin and Brandon as Dane. All right, thanks.